Today I want to tell you about one of the world's most influential living artists. Her name is Yayoi Kusama, and her story is about how art can literally save a life. If you've ever seen those famous infinity mirror rooms filled with colorful dots or giant yellow pumpkins covered in black spots, you've seen Kusama's work, but what most people don't know is that every single dot, every pattern, every repetitive line she creates is part of her daily fight for survival. Yayoi Kusama was born in 1929 in a small city called Matsumoto, in the mountains of central Japan. She grew up in a wealthy but deeply troubled family. Her mother was emotionally abusive. She forced young Yayoi to spy on her father, and his many affairs. This traumatic experience would haunt her for life. But something even stranger started happening. When Yayoi was around 7 years old, she began experiencing hallucinations. She would hear flowers, pumpkins, and even dogs talking to her. One day she was sitting at home, looking at the red flower pattern on a tablecloth. Suddenly the pattern began multiplying. It spread from the tablecloth to the ceiling, to the walls, to the windows, and eventually to her own body. She felt like she was disappearing, being obliterated. By an infinite universe of patterns, these terrifying episodes would happen again and again throughout her childhood. And this is where her art begins. Kusama discovered something important. If she rushed home after a hallucination and immediately drew what she had seen in her sketchbook, the fear would lessen. The act of recording the visions helped her process the shock. Drawing became her first form of self-therapy long before she even knew what therapy was. You see, in Japan at that time, psychiatry wasn't widely accepted. Mental illness carried enormous stigma. Kusama had to fight her battles alone. She later wrote, "Psychiatry was not as accepted in my youth as it is now, and I had to struggle on my own with the anxiety, to say nothing of the visions and hallucinations that at times overwhelmed me." Her mother hated that she wanted to be an artist. She thought painting was unsuitable for a girl and would literally rip up Yayoi's artwork. But Yayoi was determined. She convinced her parents to let her attend art school in Kyoto, where she studied traditional Japanese painting. She hated it. The strict traditional system felt suffocating to her. She dreamed of escape. Then one day, while browsing in a bookshop, she discovered the work of American artist Georgia O'Keeffe. Kusama was so inspired that she wrote her a letter, asking for advice. Surprisingly, O'Keeffe wrote back. Even more surprisingly, the established artist tried to help Kusama make connections in New York. And so in 1958, at age 27, Yayoi Kusama left Japan and moved to New York City, ready to revolutionize the art world. In New York, she began creating her famous infinity net paintings. These are massive canvases, completely covered in repetitive loops and patterns. She would paint obsessively, sometimes for days without stopping. She said, "I would cover a canvas with nets, then continue painting them on the table, on the floor, and finally, on my own body." As I repeated this process over and over again, the nets began to expand to infinity. I forgot about myself as they enveloped me. This repetition was deliberate. It was meditation. It was therapy. The act of painting the same pattern, thousands and thousands of times, calmed her panic attacks. It stopped the overwhelming thoughts. It gave her control over the chaos in her mind. Her work caught attention. She became friends with Andy Warhol and other major artists. But despite her growing reputation, she struggled. The male-dominated art world of the 1960s didn't take her seriously. She had financial difficulties, and her mental health continued to deteriorate. She became paranoid, convinced other artists were stealing her ideas. She closed all the curtains in her loft to keep people from seeing her work. One of her closest friends during this time was artist Joseph Cornell. They had an unusual relationship. Kusama later said, "I disliked sex and he was impotent. We suited each other very well." When Cornell died in 1972, it devastated her. Then her father died 2 years later. Kusama was falling apart. In 1973, she returned to Japan. She was in terrible physical and mental health. She had attempted suicide before, once even jumping out a window, but surviving by landing on a bicycle. She recognized the warning signs. She knew she needed help. In 1977, Yayoi Kusama made a decision that would save her life. She voluntarily checked herself into the Seiwa Hospital for the mentally ill in Tokyo, and she has lived there ever since. That's over 40 years. But here's the beautiful part. Her studio is just a short walk from the hospital. Every single day, she walks to her studio and creates art. She paints, she sculpts, she writes poetry and novels. She has said many times, if it were not for art, I would have killed myself a long time ago. In her autobiography, she wrote, "I fight pain, anxiety, and fear every day. And the only method I have found that relieves my illness is to keep creating art. I followed the thread of art, and somehow discovered a path that would allow me to live." The most productive period of her entire career has been while living in the psychiatric hospital. From this base, she created her iconic pumpkin sculptures, her infinity mirror rooms, and countless other works. Her paintings now sell for millions of dollars. Time magazine named her one of the world's 100 most influential people in 2016. Kusama has been completely open about her mental health struggles. In fact, she calls her work psychosomatic art. She doesn't see herself primarily as an artist. She sees art as medicine. She has said, "My artwork is an expression of my life, particularly of my mental disease." Those famous polka dots that define her work, they come directly from that childhood hallucination in the flower field. She once explained, Our Earth is only one polka dot among a million stars in the cosmos. Polka dots are a way to infinity by turning her most frightening experiences into beautiful, accessible art. Kusama has done something extraordinary. She's helped remove the stigma around mental illness, especially in Asia, where talking about mental health is still very difficult. Her success proves that mental illness doesn't have to be an obstacle to a productive, meaningful life. Today, at 95 years old, Yayoi Kusama still works in her studio every day. She still lives in the hospital. She still creates those infinite patterns that saved her life. Her story teaches us something profound about the therapeutic power of creativity. For Kusama, making art isn't about self-expression, or fame, or money. It's about survival. Each dot, each line, each repetitive pattern is an act of healing. It's her way of transforming terror into beauty, chaos into order, and darkness into light. As she herself said, "Everything I do is connected to my disease. If I don't continue making art, I will go crazy." And so she continues, one dot at a time, one pattern at a time, one day at a time.